Welcome, everybody. It's lovely to see you. It's very nice to see so many people here. Because there's so many people in this meeting, we encourage you to use the virtual raised hand, which if you go to your participants function down at the bottom of your Zoom screen and just click on it, you'll see an option on the right-hand side to raise your hand. Have a little try of that now if you want to. Yeah, Dan's just done one there. Thank you, Dan. And we've got one from Louise as well. That's good stuff. One from Kane as well. So this is the current instalment of a long series of sessions about fundraising. This one's going to focus on donor relationships. So what I'm going to do before anything else is get Kane to give us a quick introduction. But just to say, we'd love all of you to get involved and to say your bit on this. So even if you've not got your camera on, especially if you've not got your camera on, do use the raise hand function, and then we can see that you're ready to speak. But Kane, are you ready to kick us off and give us a little bit of context for this? My name's Mikey, by the way. You should be able to see that from my second screen. We're going to have a few visuals on the back here as well, so look out for those. Kane, off you go.
Hello, everyone. So I am Kane. I am Vice Chair of the Cultural Sector Network, which is the Institute of Fundraising's Cultural Sector Network group for arts and cultural fundraisers. I'm also Chair of the Cultural Sector Network Conference. I've just said Cultural Sector Network a lot in one go. We actually did Talkioki, which is a live chat show format, which you'll be guided through brilliantly by Mikey and Margot back. Literally feels like another lifetime ago at our conference back in March at our pre-event at the Roundhouse. So we're really excited to introduce them again online in the digital world. And we're talking really using as a starting off point, and we might end up somewhere very different, around donor stewardship in the digital contents, which is picking up on the theme of the Raise Arts, Culture and Heritage Programme's first workshop last week, I believe. And I'd just like to say a thank you to Arts Council England, just off the bat, for their support of the Raise programme. I'm going to hand back to you now, Mikey. But if anyone is learning about the Cultural Sector Network for the first time and wants to find out more, just drop me a message on the chat and I can tell you about how you can sign up to hear more through our newsletter. Back to you, Mikey.
Thanks, Kane. I should also say, if you missed it at the very beginning of this introduction, we are going out live to Facebook. Hopefully you're happy with that. If you're not, then just turn off your video, or let us know on the chat as well. We will be monitoring the chat. Margot's going to be having a look at what's happening on the chat and also on the Facebook chat. So hello, Facebook people as well. I don't know how many people have seen the last session last week, which is a really interesting discussion about how really to sort of grow the relationship in the kind of lockdown times. It was really interesting. I recognise a few of the faces from the Talkioki as well at the Roundhouse, so it's nice to see some familiar faces too. Does anyone want to kick off with an opening question, with an opening gambit? Anyone want to be the first person to get this going? Looks like we're going back to Kane. Kane, what's your opening question?
I guess one of the questions I had was really around whether during COVID-19 we should really be asking for money. I guess that's quite a sort of controversial topic. We're all fundraisers, but you know, to what extent do we have to balance that, like the need to fundraise, but also the need, like the duty and care that we have to our supporters, also considering quite a lot of them will potentially be older and quite vulnerable.
I mean, I'm just going to, if you don't mind, Kane, just turn the mirror back to you for a second and get a bit more out of you. Why do you feel like it's not a good time to be fundraising or to be asking people for money? Is more what you said.
Well, I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I still think you should be, but I also think there is a big the issue that you're dealing with is, what are you asking for money for? Because what I would say is that, yeah, I think it's tough for everyone across the sector at the moment. But I think the argument needs to be more nuanced than just simply, we need emergency funding to survive. You need to be showing how you are supporting the communities that you work with. And also, I think there is a balance, speaking to some of the other fundraisers about, the payoff between asking for money and actually doing that kind of care and, looking after supporters and looking after your community at this time, and how that sort of, I guess, raises your social capital. It raises a different type of support, and that potentially is more.
So what it sounds to me like, what you're saying, I'm not a fundraiser, but it sounds like what you're saying is that there's more to fundraising than asking for money. There's something about social capital, something maybe about relationships. Is that what it should be about? Does anyone else want to chime in and say their bit? We've got Samir. Try and use the digital. I'm gonna let you off this time, but try and use your digital hand But what you got to say?
Well, this relates to the event we had last week, and there's some very practical things as well here that I agree with everything Kane said, and I think in the arts we should be asking for money. And from a personal experience, so I run the London Handel Festival. We were a third of the way through the festival when Downing Street announced that people shouldn't be going to large-scale events anymore. So there was an immediate impact there of like 2/3 of the events were cancelled. We had to go back to all the audiences to say, please don't come to these events anymore. And by the way, would you consider converting your ticket sales into donations? And we've been very lucky that 60% of audiences have, and that's gone directly to the freelance musicians, and we've been able to, pass on those payments. These are people that just completely lost their livelihood overnight. But coming back to the event we had last week, it was really interesting talking to Simon Fairclough from CBSO and Will Mendelowitz from the Philharmonia Orchestra, because the kind of demographic that we have in the performing arts is, they're slightly older audiences and they're feeling socially isolated. And so there's an element of kind of reaching out to your donors as well. I'm also the trustee of Shobana Jayasingh Contemporary Dance, and we had our first online donor event last night, which I chaired. It's a Q&A between Shobana herself and a composer that we're working with. And we had 40 people joining us from many different countries. So there's that aspect of bringing people together and also combating social isolation. And through a medium of an art form that all these people enjoy. And what Will and Simon were saying is that they had to get a lot of the older donors onto Zoom in the first place and get them testing it all. So hopefully we've kind of done them a kind of a social service as well by kind of including them in this. The world has changed forever. We're never going to go back to the way we were. And I feel that this kind of mixture of digital and in-person is what's going to happen in future in terms of donor stewardship.
Okay, so we're going to be sticking with the digital side of things, but also it's there's a question about the demographic of those donors and the donor community as such, and how we get those people together. Is the Zoom thing actually working? Is that successful? This I think it was Will last week that said hand holding for the Zoom meeting to bring people into the Zoom meeting. Is that actually working as a format? Do people want to be entering into this digital world when it comes to donor stewardship? And is that really where you guys want to go? These are all sort of big questions. Dana.
Hello, hi everyone.
Hello.
Good to see you all in this way. It's very meta, this conversation, isn't it? Like, I'm very aware that we're
we can unmeta it.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if we've been, I don't know, a little bit, I wonder if we're creating more of a binary to this experience than there actually is. Because I know certainly a lot of the time, from my experiences of working in organizations, a lot of the time I was talking to people through email. So a lot of those communications and relationship development aspects were digital. They just weren't purely digital. So I don't know. I find it quite interesting, especially when in my dealings with a lot of high net worth individuals where we don't really have the chance to see them maybe more than once a year. A lot of the communication would be done really lovely either on the phone calls or through emails. So are we kind of over exaggerating the amount of donor stewardship we're doing online? Have we been doing more than we've given ourselves credit for? And is it just these extra bits, the fact that we're not doing those face-to-face things, that's making us feel the way that we do in terms of it feeling really distinct?
Okay, I mean, what about for you though, Dana? Is there a distinct change for you then, or is it just business as usual?
That's a good question. I mean, I would say, from personally speaking, I got into fundraising because I love meeting people, and I love being in a room with people. So on a personal level, I feel I miss the lack of connection and the ability to make that connection. So my preference would always be the opportunity to be in person. But I'm finding seeing people's spaces interesting. I'm finding the unusual interruptions from pets or family or delivery drivers, creating a different kind of relationship building, one that's based more on unexpectedness and a bit of randomness than it is about kind of precision conversation and all of those aspects that a lot of us have been trained to do. So it's interesting. I'm finding it all really interesting.
In a way, it's a kind of, I suppose, a more, as long as your kind of Zoom frame represents your real kind of life, your real background, not like here where we've just got a green screen, but there's a kind of honesty that comes into the conversation because we're coming from our own home, I suppose. Let me go back to Kane. What's your point, Kane?
It's just it's a good point Dana made, just about like, there's this sort of like line that we've all put up of like pre-COVID, like PC, and then after COVID, like our kind of Anna Domini, but that actually we're doing, it's a lot of the same things that we were doing already. I don't think that we weren't ever like picking up the phone to a donor or supporter before this. I think that there's also like, I guess, positives coming out of it in terms of actually, I'm definitely finding it's easier to get to people and connect to people because everyone seems to have a lot more time because they're not traveling, they're not in loads and loads of meetings. So there maybe are positives that come out of it at the same time, and you get to see into people's houses, which is quite fun. Yeah.
Okay. So there is the element of being able to see into people's houses. Is it business as usual, just a little bit more digital? Are we, let's be honest, are we just missing ourselves? It's not the donors that are missing that face-to-face conversation. It's us. I'm certainly, as a pop-up talk show host, I'm missing the liveness of actually real people. I mean, I love seeing you on the screen and that gives me a buzz, but it's not quite the same as having a whole load of people around this table. What do people think? There's a few comments coming through on the chat. Margot, do you want to give us something from the chat? What's happening on the chat?
On the chat, I think Dan mentioned that we need to let people have the option to give, because giving has got its benefits too. So I wanted him secretly and openly to elaborate on that, whether we can communicate clearly what those benefits are, or are they really obvious right now? And Dan has just posted something now.
Okay, well, we've managed to encourage Dan to raise his hand. So what are you going to add to that, Dan? So people actually enjoy giving. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I mean, I know it's outside of the cultural sector, but the whole response to Colonel Thomasy is now, and the millions that people gave to him when they never knew who he was, or they'd never met him, or had no real connection to him. I think a lot of that giving was as a it brought a benefit to the people who gave money as much as it's brought a benefit to people in hospitals.
I mean, there's a sense
that
of
really exemplifies how it can work like that.
Yeah, there's a sense of actually being able to do something, to be able to contribute, and this sense of togetherness, I think, definitely from that story. Does that also, do we feel the same about our own fundraising?
So I think just before other people answer on that, I think that was something that sort of came out a little bit from the session last week, the raise session, where people who were supporters of some of the music orchestras and stuff that they were talking about, they had an ownership of what was going on there, and they wanted to see those sorts of things continue. They were, by giving, that enabled them to feel a sense of community with others who were also giving. And yeah, that's a powerful thing that we shouldn't want to take away from people. We should want to give them as many opportunities as they can to engage with that. And everybody has the right to say no, they don't want to give, or they don't want to give at this point in time. But if you make that decision for them as a fundraiser, you've probably done them a disservice.
So should we actually be kind of highlighting this sense of community and this sense of like contributing to the greater whole when it comes to talking to our donors? There's a few strange expressions from that question there. Anyone care to answer that? Is it about, or do people feel that that's maybe a kind of like exploiting the situation of COVID? What do people think? Should the money just still be going to the NHS now rather than to cultural organisations?
That wasn't what I was saying. But
yeah, no, that's not. I'm just
but it's a good question.
To stir things up a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Because we've got quite a quiet audience here. Maybe I've gotten too controversial.
And thank you for the art gallery comments as well, everyone. It's just the St Albans Museum and Art Gallery in St Albans, and it was an exhibition that they held about a year or so ago. It's clever. It was an artist had different flower arrangements from different seasons or different months of the year, and she made a vase for each of them, and then she displayed the vases and a painting of each of the arrangements. So it's taken a year to create, but it made a nice little corner in the gallery there.
And it's still there behind you now.
It's still there. Yes, it's not in real life, but it's still virtually there.
Let's go back to Margot, because there's a point from Margot. I just want to say to the few people who've joined since we started, we are going out live on Facebook. I would encourage everyone to contribute to this conversation. We don't quite know where it's going to go today. We're going to go a bit freeform. But let's go to Margot. What's your point, Margot?
I wanted to offer up my point, but in the meantime, Lucy has said something on the chat, and she's saying NHS charities are the ones worth giving to, not the NHS. And in fact, she feels like she's been giving a bit more now than pre-COVID. But what I wanted to say, I think whether it's COVID times or otherwise, I think everybody likes, that kind of feel-good factor, and everybody likes to be, I think, celebrated and appreciated and entertained as well. And I think one of the important things about, encouraging people to donate is to give them, something that they can, walk away with a feeling of feeling good or whatever it is. So I think involving artists and kind of, maybe it's about being a bit more creative now in the online world, how we can provide that, entertaining and feel-good factor.
So it's about the feel-good factor, creating the feel-good factor. That's maybe something, and it should be said as well, that it's not, that money wasn't going directly to the NHS, but to charities supporting NHS workers. So thanks for that one, Lucy. But, it does bring in that question about, what the purpose of fundraising is in this context, in the cultural context. Any questions from anybody? And where do we want to go with this conversation? We've got something from Kane over here.
I guess I know that Michaela's just put up a long thing, not a long thing, quite a short thing, around the issue of exploiting donations. Especially if we don't know exactly whether we're going to deliver the things that we want to out to deliver. I wondered whether, Michaela, do you want to add anything on that?
Hello.
Hello, Michaela.
Hello. I was just thinking about it because we did a rush appeal and had been quite successful with it, but there was a lot of wonder to me if people really understood what they were donating towards. So I do feel like the money is, because we work with homeless and at risk, and we use the arts as a way of engagement. And so we're incredibly busy at the moment, particularly raising for the social and emergency funds. We're applying, they will apply to us because that's the work we're delivering. But it's that sort of thing of like, immediately everyone has got this panic for getting money in because they're so worried that in the future they might not be able to bring it in. So are we going for things that maybe we shouldn't be because we're so fearful? And are we best placed to be delivering that work? Is there someone better placed to deliver that work? Do the people who are donating know exactly what are we going to be able to deliver and what we think we'll be able to deliver on? And whether or not people have given and not misunderstood maybe what we're delivering because we haven't fully understood how to communicate it yet.
I mean, Michaela, where would you go with that one? Because to me, that sort of goes in two kind of different directions. One is the thing that Kane kind of started off with at the beginning, which is this idea of this relationship building. And actually, it's not necessarily about giving now, but keeping the relationship going. Do we want to go in that direction, or do we want to talk about this idea of communicating what the actual offer is now in the COVID times and being more specific on that? I mean,
I think it's a mixture. In some ways, having that commitment to a donation, but not necessarily having the donation now and in the future might be a far better thing, because that would take the pressure off of trying to get those donations from donors too quickly. Like, if they want to give now, it might be better saying developing that relationship and know that donation will come when we can spend it.
I mean, is that pressure? The people, let's have just a sense from people. Are you all feeling this pressure? Is there a certain element of panic? I think Michaela said. Are we being too knee jerk? Is it just because of the uncertainty? Because we don't really know on a weekly basis when venues are going to be open, when we're going to be able to tour, when we're going to be able to have exhibitions. Michaela, you coming back in? I'm just going to mute you, Michaela, and let's go to Kane. Go on.
Sorry, just a point from Sarah, because I think she's struggling. Sarah Shooter struggling to put her hand up if she wanted to say. Anything.
Yeah. Sarah, do you want me to come to you? Yep.
Yeah, sorry. It's gone really funny on my screen, so everybody's kind of moving around furiously. Been having problems with Wi-Fi all day. No, it's just that we just wanted to add in that we've had a really good chance to get to know some of our donors. We furloughed the whole of box office. Development is now box office. I get to answer the phones every morning. It's a little bit weird. And if one more person tells me they're donating the money because they're going to be dead by the end of this, it's getting all a little bit macabre. But, we have found we're getting a lot more second and third donations from people, because we've had to cancel in series rather than just announcing we were shut till a certain date. We've cancelled programs in times that as we've started getting clearer and clearer with our message and being more able to say, you're supporting us doing this, you're supporting this work that we've managed to put online with young people. We've transferred some of our support work online with some of our different groups that we were funded to do. That actually it's becoming easier, and actually as there's less and less of us working, the message is getting clearer, and I'm able to be in control a little bit more of what we're putting out, even though we're all in completely different places. Instead of there being 20 or 30 of us working, there's 5 or 6 of us working, so people haven't got, in a way, we've had a chance to consolidate a lot of what we're doing. Sorry, I felt that was very rambling. I feel like
I think it's
as well, which is putting me off.
On the contrary, I think it gives a sense of what it's like really to be on the ground, and I guess the thing that Michaela brought up as well is that you've got an emerging situation, and that first you don't really know what to do, and is it even possible to develop a strategy in that situation where things are just changing all the time? And things, I guess, from what you're saying, is things are settling a little bit, Sarah. But let me come to Emily, and then I'll come to David. I noticed you both got your hands up. So Emily first.
Hi, I wanted to chip in a bit with sort of following what Michaela was saying. It sounds like we're in similar organisations. We work with people, Streetwise Opera works with people who are homeless, and we run singing and acting workshops, which we had to stop obviously in March, and we moved all of our activity online, and we're doing some postal stuff. And we're in an interesting position because we are heavily funded by trusts and foundations, and then kind of secondarily individuals. And we found that a lot of our trusts and foundations got in touch immediately and gave us repeat gifts or additional gifts. And the kind of route we went down with our major donor program, which was a 2-year pledge towards a specific show, which has been postponed to next year. All the finances have been moved to next year. So we got in touch with all our major donors and said, look, we know everything has changed. Can you still commit to your second year gift? And if so, we're going to move that into next financial year. We're in a relatively stable position at the moment, which means we cannot go for emergency funding. But the impact, we're going to have a huge impact on next year's finances.
Yeah.
So we ask people to make another gift now in order to get us through this period while competition for new funds and new individuals is so high, and while we can't go for emergency funding. Actually, can you give us some core funding now that will see us through this year and that will allow us to start fundraising for next year, which has gone down amazingly well with a lot of them, actually, especially because they have project gifts being moved to core gifts.
Can I just ask as well, how has that affected the people delivering these programs? Are they working freelance? Are they working for the organization? How have you dealt with that side of things?
So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to continue activity, because our workshop leaders and support workers are all freelance contracts. And so we wanted to be able to continue paying them, particularly in the beginning. We paid them for all of their commitment for the rest of the term, which was up until the end of April. And then we wanted to find ways that we could continue to employ them. So interestingly, our support workers who only worked for us 2 hours a week are now doing more like 10 hours a week, because they're taking on a lot of the phone calls to our participants, because they're really hard conversations. And so we found a way to actually engage them more in our work while we furloughed our program producers who are staff who would normally do that kind of more pastoral care. So we've been finding ways to cut our budget, but and keep those who are employed furloughed and make use of the government money whilst keeping those who are self-employed employed. And I think they are enjoying it. An
amazing juggling acts going on there. Let me come to you, David. You've had your hand up.
Yeah, it was just following on from Michaela's point about responding when we're not really sure what the future looks like. And I just wanted to share an example from Park Theatre in London, because they, in the same boat as everyone else, they don't know when they're going to be able to reopen the doors and let people back in. But they did work out that they knew they need about £100,000 in 3 months from getting that green light to be able to put stuff on stage and be able to welcome people back in. So they based all of their emergency campaign on building up that war chest effectively, so that whenever they get the green light, they know they're going to be able to move forward. And that seemed like a really smart move, because I think a lot of people are feeling that there's going to be a short burst over the last couple of months where there's going to be more money available through emergency funds, through individuals really trying to respond to the COVID-19 crisis, but that there's likely to be a bit of a lull as we start to move out of this. So that just seemed like a really nice way of trying to address some of that uncertainty and trying to make a plan to overcome that.
I mean, can I just ask, from your perspective, David, do you feel uncertain? Do you feel like you're grappling with this now? Or do you think that the uncertainties are still kind of hanging there in the background?
I think certainly in terms of the fundraising need for most organisations, those uncertainties are there, because people aren't sure when that earned income is going to be able to pick up again. So how long we're going to have to go without having ticket income or that secondary spend from visitors and audience. And also a level of uncertainty about how donors are going to respond. So if we go into recession, are trusts going to give more money away or less, for example? Are companies going to be giving more or less? Love the image in the background there, Mike. It's great.
Doing our images, we should just give him some plaudits. He's trying to visualize the conversation just to get it a bit more creative.
So yeah, I think there is still quite a lot of uncertainty, and particularly over the time scale for things. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's the sense I'm getting from everybody here, but we're trying to sort of navigate our way through it without really knowing where it's going. I feel like people are more on top of it than they were before, though. At least we're getting that. I'm getting that feeling that people are kind of, you know, starting to find their balance again. So I guess where do we want to take? Oh, we've got
a point from Kane. Maybe you can tell us, Kane.
Yeah, I guess I'm just sort of bouncing off what David was saying about the uncertainty about earned income, which I think is, I think a lot of, especially if you're a bigger venue, or you're presenting bigger work, is like a massive, massive fear and issue right now of just like, actually, will we be able to, where do we make money from? And I guess to what point organizations need to start really pivoting what they do, pivoting who they are as an organization. It's this strange thing.
What do you mean by that?
Well, like there's this sort of, there's this logic that, the organizations that will fare better are those, historically have been those that have had money coming in from different places, be it from government or from funders or from like their shop and cafe, lots of different streams. But actually it's those that are most subsidized at the moment who feel most protected, which is sort of a weird reverse logic. It kind of throws on, you look at the issues that say the old Vixen at the moment, and it's sort of where their entire, they really, they don't get any government subsidy. They generate a lot in terms of box office income, that they're really, really exposed. And I guess that's back to David, is just, I guess there's that, like, how are you you can be optimistic about how are you pragmatic about, and how do you adapt your organization when actually it might be 12 months before you're raising any money from your sort of traditional ticket income and all of that stuff.
It sounds like I'm not trying to bring this down, but it does sound like a bit of a nightmare what you're talking about there. But David, have you got a response to that?
Sorry to be the pessimist.
Well, I mean, organisations are going to have to adapt, and I think that is one thing the sector is very good at. And we've seen that over the first couple of weeks of this, and I think every organisation will be in a different place. I'm not sure I do agree on the subsidised front. Again, I think there's too much variety across that to sort of take a one-size-fits-all approach.
I mean, what about this question of creativity? Because we are going to have to be creative, because we don't, there is the uncertainty. We don't really know what's going to work in the future. So is there how do we sort of bring the creativity from the, into the fundraising itself, or into how we kind of like establish our budgets in the future? Margot, you've got a point.
I've got some stuff coming through on the chat, and I wonder whether I can persuade Christine to join on audio, or but she's been saying that some of the funders or funder that she's been speaking to, they've got much less work and they've got a lot of time on their hands, so they've been quite productive. And I wonder whether there's something about involving donors a bit more in the process of fundraising. I don't know, maybe infecting other donors with more
hopefully
ways, obviously in a positive kind of goodwill to give more. So that's one thing. And also Samira is saying the BBC Proms are putting out live events at the end of August, announced today, so hopefully they'll provide a template for how we can move forward. But also something that I think it was Danielle who said, it's about letting donors know that whatever they fund now, it's actually going towards the really unknown future, something David was talking about, so just kind of, it's not a short burst of giving for something that's happening now, it's more about investing in the future. Lots of points coming from the chat, so keep that coming. I will just let you know that I'm bouncing it out to our followers on Facebook. That's the People Speak Facebook, and you can follow the threads of conversation. Hello, on the Twitter as well.
How do we cope with this uncertain situation? I suppose we've got a point from Anna. Anna, what's your point?
Well, I was just going to say that to build relationships with donors, donors always appreciate you being transparent about your situation. So you don't really have to make up a story about what's happening. You can be totally honest with them and say what your position is, because they're most likely to respond to the most genuine requests. I always found when I was working at the National Theatre, we had a bit of disaster when we did a capital campaign. When we reopened the National Theatre studio, it got burgled the day after it got opened, and all of the Apple computers there got stolen that the donors had paid for. And we had a choice, you know, do we tell the donors or do we not tell the donors? And actually we told the donors over the phone, and they just expressed their sympathy and said they were sorry to hear it, but we wanted to tell them before it got into the press, basically. So that was a good example of where we had a really challenging time, but we sort of fessed up to our donors, and they all just kind of said, well, thank you for letting us know, and we're sorry to hear it, and you know, it's not your fault, kind of thing. So I think there is something to be said for being very transparent with donors and believing that your work's important at this time. You know, not thinking that other organisations should be doing it, but that you're the best organisation to be delivering it.
I mean, I guess they've already got that relationship with you, and they already believe in you, obviously. So then I guess, you know, it is really about being as kind of human as possible, and, you know, where things go wrong, to let them know where things go wrong as well. Let me go to Kane.
Yeah.
We're talking about when disasters happen and when things do go wrong. They do go wrong, and, you know, we're all human beings, and accidents happen, incidents happen, bad people come along, venues get burnt down, viruses come along, and we've got to kind of, you know, deal with that. So you were kind of saying, Kane, that you tell us a little bit more about what happened with the Battersea Arts Centre and the fire.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing with that was that we moved really, really fast and tried to just be transparent and talk to people and talk to our community. And I think also just thinking really early on, which I think is important for as we come out of it, is just how you thank everyone that supported you over this moment in time. I think it's really important, like, you know, it's that looking towards the future thing, like seeing the positive light at the end of the tunnel, seeing the proms potentially coming back on, and just how you include your donors in part of that kind of celebration, hopefully at the end of things.
Yeah, well, I guess it's about being on the journey, and the journey, parts of the journey, anyone that's in theatre knows there's always like a difficult challenge that you overcome, and you wanted to, I guess, take your donors with you on the whole journey, not just the nice bits at the end, but the ups and the downs, I suppose you could say.
Yeah, it's really
so where do we go from here? Do people agree with that? We've got a round of applause from Catherine. Is that an accidental round of applause? It was a real, genuine applause, but you have got nothing to say to add. Oh, you do? Okay, let me come to you, Catherine. Hang on. Yeah.
Hi. Just coming back to the original point of do we ask at this time? I think a number of people have chipped in on that. Alexandra Palace, and this crisis has hit us at a really difficult moment just when we were beginning to build our donor program.
Right.
So we've kind of had an opportunity in many ways here to be very blunt about the deficit that we're looking at, and we've used that word very frequently in our communications, talking about being blunt and telling it like it is, and that's gone down really well. And it's actually led to us having a big set of new donors coming on board, recognising us as a charity for the first time and beginning to get involved. So while it's a really difficult situation in terms of building our programmes, particularly our individuals, which we had very little of at Alexandra Palace up till now, I think this could actually be a bit of a turning point for us, people beginning to get involved and understand that they can be involved for the first time. And a lot of the language that we've been using is to do with channeling goodwill.
Yeah.
So people are there, people want to get involved, and people are on our doorstep wanting to get involved. And so it's about how do we give them the opportunity to be part of that, both physically through volunteering. That's one thing that's been complementary to this, and also by donations. So that's been a kind of dual process.
I mean, what is that conversation like? I mean, how do you start the conversation? Are people coming to you, these new people that, is it just because you're there You've already got a footprint in the community. How does that conversation begin with these new volunteers and donors?
So we've obviously got a large footprint, physical footprint on the ground because we've got the big park.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of putting physical stuff down, lots of signage, lots of awareness raising there, as well as online, and just really beginning to get embedded in lots of the local forums and raising a hand there and getting people to understand that we're here, that we're an amazing organisation right next to where they are. That's been a really effective message.
Yeah. So just putting your fingers out there, kind of getting into the local networks and just being part of the conversation, I suppose.
Yeah. But definitely this channeling goodwill thing took us a little while to get there. And definitely took me a while to persuade people that meant asking for money as well as giving them an opportunity to be involved physically. There was definitely a level of guilt about that within, or worry.
Well, you can say a little bit about the guilt, because I think this is kind of, in a way, the elephant in the room that kind of is implied with Kane's question about, is this the right time to be asking for money, or what is that guilt about?
I feel like it's just to do with not knowing what different people's situations are, and a recognition that everybody's coming into this crisis in a different position and might leave it in a different position. So there's this worry, kind of, I think, universal worry, not just in arts institutions, to do with whether you're asked or land with somebody who's in a really awkward place. So that's, I think, a straightforward underlying thing for everybody. And I definitely think that is increased in an arts or cultural institution where there is this like fear that somehow people will think we're non-essential at this time. And I pick up on that point made just now about being confident and clear that we're the best people to do what we're doing, and that we have a really a value, and people will value us at this time. And that was, again, one of the points I felt that we had to make to get buy-in from our management on making lots of asks. Okay,
well, that's definitely given us an insight into, your perspective, and that the question of the guilt, I think, is really important. Sarah, what's your point?
It was just along that idea of guilt of asking, is that since we've moved everything into the development team, we've kind of had control of that, and I've discovered on our ticketing system lots of tags that had been created that were by box office that said do not ask because this person is a board member, or do not ask because this person has already given this year, that I have subsequently removed. But that idea of that guilt has been quite interesting, and actually a lot of people were saying, oh, but people are having a difficult time, how can you ask them to donate your ticket money? And as somebody who's been on the front line, I can't say any, because you're always going to get one person in a bad mood or whatever, but we've had a really positive response even from those people who've not been able to donate their ticket money. We've had lovely conversations with them about how they understand, and how, if it was a different circumstance, they would love to donate. And we've had some people who've never donated to the theatre before, who I've had no contact with before, donating £200 or £300 back to us in ticket money without batting an eyelid. And we've collected a load of really lovely stories that we're getting over the phone and on email of older people telling us that they come to the theatre by themselves. It's the only time they have social contact with anyone, how much they're missing us. And we're getting permission to be able to use those stories anonymously, but in social media and back to other donors to explain the value of the theatre. And I think it was really important what Catherine was saying about, we are important, and we aren't less or more important than anybody else who's fundraising or any other charity at the minute, because we have different values to different people.
Do you think there is a bit of an inferiority complex in the arts somehow, that we don't? Okay, well, we can address that later on. But I'm going to take your point, I'm going to paraphrase it, is literally in the system, this, in Sarah's system anyway, this kind of inhibition for asking for money. Was you raising a point there, Emily, or was it just a flick of the hands? But let me come to Dan, because you've used the official hand-raising system. So let me come to you first. Yeah,
I guess I was just going to sort of pick up on Sarah's point there, and I put comment in the chat earlier that organisations will have to fess up a bit more about being charities in the future in order to secure donations. And I think there's a real challenge for charities that earn their income as well as get donated income, and maybe there's too much emphasis on the more transactional earned income, like through tickets, and sort of that's a comfortable way of getting money, because there's a clear, people give you money and then you give them a ticket and then a performance. So it is much more transactional. It's less about donation or it can come across as less about donation and more about buying something in the same way that we buy any other entertainment from anyone else. And
is there a kind of conflict there, do you think, or do you think it's just?
Well, there isn't, but I think that what charities and that's fine that charities are able to earn income. That's entirely legitimate. Lots of charities, or most income to charities, over 50% of charitable income across the UK is earned in some way, either from a contract with the government or from payment by individuals. But I think what the current crisis is doing is helping organisations think a little bit more about the value that they provide, as Sarah is saying, and that is something that people can make a donation towards rather than just pay a ticket price for. And this crisis has enabled that conversation to happen a little bit more easily about when performances don't happen, then please the charities can ask to turn that ticket price into a donation, and then actually it becomes a bit clearer for the person coming to the event that they are actually a donor rather than just an attendee, and they maybe feel a greater ownership and engagement with the value of the art that's being presented rather than just being a passive recipient of it.
I mean, just going forward, do you think that's something that could be spelled out a bit more when it comes to an audience?
It's something. Who was saying? Dana was saying that some of this digital stuff that we started off talking about was something we've been doing already, and yes, there are some charities and some arts organisations that are doing much more of that with their ticket sales, and thinking that it is a donation activity as much as a simple sort of marketing and sales activity. And you get it in heritage organisations as well, to some extent, where you pay to visit a national trust property, and you pay a bit more if you want to make it into a donation, and then it gets gift aided. So there is kind of that concept there in some cultural organisations already, but it's maybe now's the time to ramp it up a lot more. Okay, so we should be panning this out a little bit more. I guess it also comes to this question of, as well, have we got a little bit of the guilt? Is there a bit of guilt stopping us from doing that, or inhibition, or is it just the ways of doing things? These are all questions that are going out to you. What about the inferiority complex of the culture sector? These are all some of the questions coming through. It's kind of up to you what way you want to take this conversation. I'm just kind of highlighting a few things. Kane, what do you want to say?
Just to point out, there's like a whole side chat going on here on the chat, mostly between Christine and Samir. But Hannah also had a really brilliant point about just a really good, happy story about a donor that came forward, and I just wondered whether one of those three might be up for sort of talking. I mean, maybe Hannah, do you want to say anything?
Hannah, do you want to fill us in a little bit more? I've not been following the text, I've been mostly following the conversation. Would you like to say a bit more? It's up to you if you want to say a bit more about it.
I was just saying that we had a completely unexpected individual make a major gift to us who had never been on our radar before. She was she basically signed up to our newsletter years ago. We've got a very small pool of people sort of on our mailing list, that kind of thing. And we just sent out a newsletter asking people to kind of make top up donations of an appeal we were running to launch something in response to us running an online offer for while we can't get children into our building while the pandemic is on. And we're expecting like, a $5 here and there and stuff. And she basically gave us £1,000. So it was just in response to one email, which was not personalized at all. It was just the generic bailout from MailChimp. So I think people are sort of responding in very unexpected ways at the moment, in very, very generous ways. And sometimes something which might seem a long shot is actually proving very fruitful.
Yeah.
What we found. So,
I mean, is there a conclusion you're going to draw from that, Hannah? Is it about this long-term relationship? Is it just about this kind of ebbs and flows and the unexpected nature of what's going on at the moment? I mean, what conclusion do you draw from it?
I think maybe just never to make certain assumptions about what people can give, how people are able to support, because we had mainly been, as many small charities do, had been concentrating our efforts on the people who we knew had the capacity to support us at that level.
Yeah, so in a way, be open-minded and put your feelers out there and get into, as Catherine has been. I'm going to come to you in a second, Samir, but let me just come to Anna. You've had your hand up for a long time.
And just to say, Samir is about to bounce. So.
Okay, so we'll get a final thought from you, Samir.
And just to say, before everybody goes, if you have to go earlier, then that's totally fine, but just let us know in the chat and we'll come to you for your final thoughts. But over to you, Samir.
Anna, I'm going to come to you in a second. Let's get a final thought from Samir before you go.
Sorry, a lot of people know who I am, and another hat that I wear is I lead on the mentoring for the Cultural Sector Network, and I have to actually go into a separate meeting now with Rose. We've got to leave together because we've got a meeting about mentoring. But my point was really echoing what Hannah just said, that so with the London Handel Festival, we had something like 400, 500 people whose tickets were cancelled, and 60% of them, as I previously said, converted into donors. One of our trustees actually rang up all the people that had given over £100, and I've now got a team of volunteers that are going to ring up everyone else. And the people that kind of really moaned about stuff before, and I just thought, you're going to be the last person that's going to give this. I'm predicting that you're going to say, no, I want a full refund. I was really surprised. People like, this is a good thing. We've been coming for years. We'd hate to see it go. Yeah. Therefore, we're going to convert. And as I said on the chat, it was a form of a free wealth screen for me. So why pay, these companies, thousands of pounds where I've got a wealth screen completely, and particularly getting my trustee and now these volunteers to ring them all. They will open up a lot more and tell us. So that with wealth screening, it's about propensity to give, ability to give, and proximity to the organisation. Well, we'll know a lot more about their propensity to give just by opening up the conversation. So that's just my parting thought. Sorry.
Okay, well, great one. Good one. Good luck with the other meeting. And that's just keep that. You don't know where that conversation is going to lead. So keep those conversations going, I think is the message there. Have we lost Rose? We didn't get a final thought from Rose. So we'll come back to you, Hannah. Anna, sorry. Thanks for being patient.
That's all right. I just wanted to say that these case studies highlight something about what we underestimate in the arts, which is that often we forget that our arts organisations are the closest thing to people's hearts. People really do love the arts in a way that, a medical, for example, I give money to the Yard Theatre because I'm a trustee there and I love it. But I've also given money to the Motor Neuron Disease Association because my mum died of motor neuron disease. But that's two completely separate transactions in my head. The Yard Theatre I absolutely love, whereas the MND Association I have a duty to give to. And I think what we don't really realise in the arts, I mean, I've worked in the arts sector and the straight charity sector, is that we have a real advantage there, that we're in people's hearts. You know, often with straight charities, you're in somebody's head that they need to give. But I know from working at a lot of different theatres and speaking to major donors that my major donors always said to me, "Oh, I give to such and such charity because my wife died of this or a family member died of that. But to you, we give because we love it and we're really motivated by it." So in fact, that it doesn't really surprise me that people have come forward and said, "No, keep my money, please do," because that's that love coming through about your organisation.
Is that something that we should be a bit more conscious of, this question of the love of the arts or the love of a particular organisation? And how does that really translate into this question of these these conversations that we're having with all of these donors and with all of the long-term partners that we have.
Well, I'm not suggesting on prying on people, obviously, but it's just that you know, I know from talking to some friends who go to theatre, they're really mourning the loss of being able to go out to see shows. So one of the things that would make them feel better is donating to the theatre to put their stuff online, for example. I mean, I know the National Theatre is a big example, but they've put their shows online, and the first NT Live that went out that was streamed raised about £50,000 in donations. So it just shows how willing people are to, and they don't really want to get things for free either. You know, a lot of people say, oh gosh, you've live streamed this stuff. I would have, if I'd have gone to the West End or a theatre, I would have paid 30 quid for the ticket, so I ought to pay for this, you know. So it is in people's minds, and I don't think,
in their hearts, as you're saying,
and in their hearts, and I really don't think a lot of donors would want to see their theatre company or the art gallery or anything they support go to waste, you know. So I think, you know, without sounding draconian, I think we can take advantage of that, basically.
I mean, are we really, I guess, having a sort of vivid enough picture of, you know, how these donors are feeling? Because you're talking about them mourning the theatre. They're feeling in a way, they're really suffering a sense of loss from not having the arts. So that phone call, that is actually a reconnection.
Yeah, absolutely.
And are we building up the right kind of picture about our donors? It seems like, obviously, we're going to hear the positive stories, but from what Sarah said, the vast majority of the stories are positive. And is this the way in which we should be connecting? This is the question, really. Are we painting the right picture of how the donor's feeling? Are they all feeling the same? Maybe they're feeling differently. I don't know. It's not up to me to say.
Also, I think Rose is about to go, so but you shared a really interesting link as well. So just before you go, Rose, are you still here? No. I think we may have just missed her. No, I'm
sorry. Gone to the
sorry.
other meeting. But D. Wallace, is it David? That's a guess.
Thank you. It's Dominic Wallace, Society of Antiquaries. I chair the London Events Committee. So my experience of
we got a bit of a bad go on, try that again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, just about.
Did you get my name? It's Dominic Wallace,
Dominic,
Society of Antiquaries.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've opted for stewarding our donors rather than asking them for money at this stage, because we anticipate that after the lockdown we'll be able to engage with them through an exhibition. And it's very important that that exhibition is a fundraising exhibition. And we didn't want to saturate them with too many requests for funding. So I've just been writing to them personally over the last couple of weeks with updates, rather than asking them for money. And I just wondered what experience other people, what feelings the others felt about stewarding rather than asking for money.
I mean, in your view, Dominic, is there like a after hearing the conversation today, is it a very much a kind of clear line for you? Is there a question that, because I think a lot of people are just saying they're starting a conversation and the money thing comes a bit more kind of in a more fluid way. What do you think about that? I mean, is it a very different approach just to have the conversation than to be upfront asking for the money?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, because we've got a cultural site, which is a building site, and the contractors are down to 50%, but work is ongoing there. And it was due to open in 2021, but it's now going to open in 2022, so it's much delayed. Everything's been pushed back and postponed. And it's too soon to really identify the true damage that this emergency had. So we just wanted to be really sure of our story and where it had impacted on us most and where we needed help most.
Yeah.
And we just didn't feel, while the fog has descended on the project, that this was the right time to do it. So rather than sort of panic and say, help us, we're in trouble, because we're not, the project will still happen. It's just going to pinch quite a lot.
Yeah.
It's just, we're anticipating that in sort of late June, we should be able to see roughly where the horizon is, and then plan for how we're going to ask after that. So what the steps we took was just to inform our donors about what we're doing and what's happening, and to tell them about the delays to the program.
Yeah.
Rather than say, give us your money, because that has to be managed very, very carefully. We can only ask once.
Yeah. So you're, in a way, you've got a more kind of like long-term, let's wait and see what happens. And let's just keep the relationship going. Let's not bring money into it right now. It's a different view. And I think it's good to also get this other perspective, because I think we've been hearing more from those people that have been, I guess, more proactive and have gone for the ask earlier on. But does it affect the longer term plans when we don't really know what's happening? We don't know how things are going to pan out. Some of these projects are, I think in your case, Dominic, very, very long term. Let me come to Dana. What's your point, Dana?
I just wanted to extend and play a little bit of devil's advocate in terms of the ticket to donation aspects and the value we're placing on it, because in behavioral economics there's a concept called mental accounting, which is basically the different values that people place on money based on whatever subjective criteria they're given. So I think what's interesting is that up until now we've been asking people to buy their tickets, and that's one thing, and then we've been asking people to make donations, and that's a very different thing.
Yeah.
In the process that's been created, where we're now making ticket to donation, means that we've created a subjective set of criteria to which they are now measuring their donation. They weren't comparing it to the ticket price before, but now they are. So how's that going to affect the way that we ask them longer term and into the future, when a lot of us work for organizations where the ticket value might be £20 per head, but the cost of that show is like £100 per head, and we need the donations to actually make up the difference. So I just think that's an interesting insight from behavioral economics that we know, and I'm just interested to see how that's going to play out now. And I think it's related to David's point in the chat about why are we only asking once. If we're demonstrating the value or the impact or the change that money's had, we might be able to kind of shift it back to a more philanthropic place than it being compared to a transactional process.
Right. So you think actually that when this comes from the science of behavioral, if it is a science of behavioral economics, that you're actually kind of making a donation more transactional by converting the ticket into a donation. You're kind of saying, well, actually, this then is transactional. It's not a gift at all. It's part of the transaction, the day-to-day transaction, and that changed people's psychology about what they're giving and why they're giving.
It's whether those people would have been donors in the first place. Just because they've converted their ticket to a donation this time doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to become long-term donors.
Yeah.
So kind of, I think in some ways it could be a little bit of a red herring, that process. Go on, Emily's
wants to burst in, but I just really want to ask you, do we know? Have we got any indication? What makes you say that? Is it
the behavior? The science. I mean, the science behind it of just, when I consider where people would be accounting for their donations from in their head, if that's now shifted, will their behavior shift, or will it shift in a way that we don't want it to shift? But I'm just curious what other people think.
So it's more of a hunch than anything else, but the hunch could come out. And Emily, are you agreeing with this as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask what Dana's how she would have done it. Would it have been, and I don't have the hand up button thing, so I have to use my physical hand, so sorry that I'm doing it wrong. But I'm just curious, like, what would your approach have been? Would your approach have been, right, you've spent £300 on tickets over the next 3 months, here is your £300 refund, now will you make us a donation because this is what we need money to support? Would that have been a better way around it psychologically?
That's one interesting experiment. The reason for that is that you're showing reciprocity and generosity there. So by saying, all right, we'll give you your £300 back because do you know what? We've all been financially hit by this. So we just want to make sure you get your money back first. You've done them a little gift. You've done them a favor. And then saying, but would you consider supporting us? Because guess what? We're having a hard time too. That would be a really interesting experiment in my mind.
I mean, are we doing the experiments enough? And how do other people think this is going to pan out? Do we just give the money back and then ask for it back again? So it's a kind of, I do it sometimes I used to do it with my little nephew, you know, give the money and then he'd give the money back and then give the money back and give the money. But is this actually building up this sense of I can't say it.
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity. Thank you, Margot. Kane, I felt that you wanted to say something there. Oops, yeah.
I guess it's a slightly different, it was being touched on quite a bit of just like, actually there's something really exciting about the fact that like normally there's this massive divide for organizations between, you know, if you're a venue particularly, between like selling tickets, promoting your show, doing all of that stuff, and then, you know, maybe in the background a little bit talking about the fact that you're a charity and all this great like work that you're doing, all this engagement work, the way you're supporting new artists. And I think there's something quite excited about the fact that that first thing has been lost. You're not promoting as much. You might still be doing some things, but there's less of those things. And actually how that changes the conversation. So, you know, you're really only left with talking about the fact you're a charity. So I think that's probably the exciting thing that I think comes out of it. So that's going on like massive, like Natalie, I see Natalie, Christine, there's a whole side chat going on. Natalie, do you want to say anything?
There's a lot going on. Natalie, I don't think, I can't see, oh, there you are down there. Do you want to chime in on what you've been saying on the chat? You seem to be coming in and out a little bit with your picture. Maybe we're just going to have to rely on what's coming through in the chat, but do come back in, Natalie, please, if you want to add to what you've been saying on the chat. We are kind of coming into the last 15 minutes of this, so we're going to have to wrap up some of these points, and I'll just very quickly sum up some of the sort of questions here. A little bit of it is about relationship building versus asking for money. Then there's this idea about a lot of organizations here I feel are like ticket based and turning the tickets into donation. Is that a good thing, or could that come back in your face because it makes this conversation more transactional? There's stuff about the relationship with donors and about their feelings and their sense of loss and their wanting to contribute. There's the ethical thing as well, I think, which we keep skating over. So it's up to you where you want to go for these last 15 minutes, but we are kind of coming towards the end of this. Anna, you had your hand up. Is it still relevant? Do you still want to come in there? Oops.
Sorry. Yeah, what I was just going to say was agreeing with Kane, because sometimes, for example, I work in the theatre sector, and sometimes theatres are mistaken for commercial organisations. But actually, if you got your money back, and then because a lot of theatres that I had tickets booked for, given my money back, or offered to give my money back, but then said, if you can donate it, you do realise we're a charity and we're dealing in difficult times. So actually, I think it's made the distinction between commercial theatres and charitable theatres in a really good way, and helps promote the charitable case for support for the arts. I
mean, you're a perfect example then, where people have given the money back. Have you felt like giving it back again to them? Does that work, do you think?
To be honest, the people who have got my donations have been the people that either said, we'll give you your money back unless you want to give us half, we could split it. So that's what the Kiln Theatre did. They said you can either have a full refund, or if you give 50% to us that's a donation and we'll give 50% back. I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah.
The National Theatre just gave all my money back, so I didn't bother giving them a donation because I thought, oh, they don't need it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just my thought from experience.
Okay. I mean, also there's this question of this behavioral economics, and do we, as fundraisers, do we know enough about this and about people's psychology? Are we really kind of like exploiting this science as much as maybe we should? Dana's brought it up. Where do we want to go for these last 15 minutes? Where do we want to take this conversation and wrap up some of these loose ends? Nowhere. Come on, somebody, please. Kane, help us out here.
Christine's got her hand. Well,
have you?
Clapping.
Sorry, I didn't.
Been clapping for a while.
Okay, sorry, Christine. Sorry to ignore. There's so many people.
That's all right.
I can't always see the raised hands.
Can you hear me now, people?
Yes.
I just wanted to turn it on its head a little bit because, we've talked a lot about what stewardship is. And some of the most productive conversations I've had have actually been about the point that Anna was talking on earlier, which is really about why your donors love you and where they are in your heart. So I've worked in both types of charities, what you might call mainstream and also arts charities. And I think it's that thing that there is reluctance in the arts sector to be considered as a charity, and certainly not a charity worthy of comparison with a frontline, COVID-19 response charity. But they're two completely different things. And I think the charity conversation is slightly a red herring. It's a way of giving, it's a mechanism. But what really you want to know is why your donors love you. If you can have that conversation about what it is that makes your organisation, your theatre, your whatever, really special to them, it's often something you wouldn't otherwise know. It'll be something personal.
Can you give us an example?
Really good example. When I was working at the Royal Northern College of Music, I was talking to people who basically love music. They couldn't imagine a life without music. And it would often be a very early love of music because it was in their house, their parents were musicians, or they loved a certain type of music, and they just wanted it to carry on. They wanted to give a gift in memory of a family member, and it was couldn't imagine not doing. And
it's very, very deep actually, and this connection is very, very deep, and maybe
And the conversations I've been having more recently with new donors are really quite rich because they've got time now to think about what, in this case, the museum means to them and what they can do, in this moment when they've got more time to think about where they can help. They're not as busy as they were. They're not working full time maybe, but they've got time to have some really creative conversations about how they can help museum going forward. So
can you once again give us a bit of an example so we've got something to latch onto?
Yeah, so I'm working for Turner's House Museum in Twickenham at the minute. It's a very small house. JMW Turner designed and lived in it. And it faces some real challenges because it is so tiny. We can't have big events.
Yeah.
But I've been talking to an architect who's loved the place for years and often thought about doing something. And now we're having some really good conversations about all sorts around that he's obviously been storing up in his head, but we've been talking now about what he would do. And he's both donated twice already, whilst bringing in an army of his creative contacts to look at everything from,
wow, amazing,
through to corporate membership schemes, all sorts that, he's been feeding into really quite collaboratively. So, and that was about finding out why he was interested in the first place. So it's been really interesting to have the time to have conversations like that.
I mean, thank you, Christine. That's a really valuable input there, I think, because it really gives us a sense, like a concrete sense of, obviously there's been a huge shift, but these can have real benefits in terms of having a more intimate relationship maybe with the donors and with the wider community.
It's not the transactional thing, definitely.
Yeah.
It's much more bespoke and personal.
Yeah, so this personal thing I think is really coming out from that story.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, Catherine has left, but she has left her final thought as well, and she is agreeing with Anna about the fact that people give to us because they love us, and our service is bringing the joy, and the challenge is finding ways of reminding donors of that joy while so much programming is still impossible. So that was a parting thought from Catherine, but I know that Anna and the team wanted to mention about an event coming up. Actually, it's a bursary, isn't it? There's some kind of announcements that we may want to make before the session closes. So maybe we can open up for some more final thoughts, and then we'll come to you, Anna, maybe?
Oh, well, maybe I think maybe we should go to Anna first if we want to hear about this, and then we can get the final thoughts, because just in case people need to leave 5 minutes early so that they can hear.
I may not be the best person. Kane, do you want to talk about
Kane,
it?
okay,
Sorry.
over to Kane.
Sorry, Anna.
Kane, tell us about this bursary. Let's find out about this first, and then we'll get final thoughts.
Why are you throwing it over to me? So the RAISE programme, the Cultural Sector Network, funded by the Arts Council. I'm guessing I
must
should
say that, yeah.
Those things. Arts Council. So yeah, there's bursaries which have just opened today for free places at this year's fundraising convention, which obviously is digital. I think it's on the 6th to the 8th of July, but I might have that totally wrong, and that might be last year's dates. It's for fundraisers from small organisations, fundraisers from outside London, fundraisers from underrepresented groups, you name it, there's a bursary for it. If you're interested at some point, I think Anna and Rose posted the link, so check it out.
But the link's in the chat, is that right?
Yes.
Is that
The link's in the chat,
okay.
And I'm sure we can get it to you afterwards.
Okay, so I think it's crucial to get that, just in case people need to go early. We've got to, let them know that there's money available for this. Or
fundraising chat if there wasn't money available.
Yeah, exactly.
And the deadline is 22nd of June, so there's loads of time.
Right. Okay. So let's just get the final thoughts. And what are people thinking? Do they feel like their perspective has changed from this conversation? Has it been interesting to hear what other people's strategies? Are they going to steal anything? Would they like to know more about what people are saying? Let's get some final thoughts. And that's over to everybody, including those that have been watching but have not been on video, because you feel invited to come on and say the last few things. So anyone want to give a final thought? We've got one. Louise, was that a raised hand? Thank you. Hang on. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, no, it's been really interesting. I run the hub, which is in Lichfield in the middle of the country, and we're quite fledgling really. We're multi-use heritage and arts venue. So we did manage to get some emergency funding on the heritage side. But our performing arts schedule had really only just started getting going, and we were starting to average out at 60% of audiences, and it was really taking off. And we just opened a coffee shop, and that was just taking off. And then literally everything was gone. So on our fundraising side, we've had some good look with trusts, but on the individual donation side, that's kind of starting to build. So it's really interesting to get all these ideas, because we haven't got that much of a pool yet. We've had some donations in. We just launched our second program, so we haven't sold that many tickets, but so we had a couple of shows, but we've just been rescheduling, and most people have rolled the money over rather than, we haven't had to cancel that much other than stuff that hadn't sold anyway. But it's just really interesting to get some ideas really, and to start thinking where we can go with this, and perhaps we do a newsletter, so maybe some ideas of what we can do within that, and try and get some. We have started asking people to buy a virtual coffee or a coffee with friends. So we're trying to, we've got a donations button and things like that. So it's just really good to connect with people that are also in the arts and culture, and just get some ideas really. So thank you.
You never know what that newsletter might bring up. Okay, Dan, final thought?
Yeah. So I just was going to say yes. It's been really good. It's been interesting to hear people's views and comments. But I was also going to. I'm one of the committee members for the Cultural Sector Network as well. There's a few of us dotted around the screen here. And I was just interested to know. This is the first time we've done something like this as a virtual networking session, and just wanted to thanks Louise for your comment there that you found it useful, but just wanted to see whether other people thought we should do this sort of thing again, and on what sort of regular basis might be a good way to do it. So
and maybe also what the themes could be as well, because I think it's always
got a
good to have
thumbs
a
up
bit
there
of
from Christine.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So we were going to try and thank you, Sarah. We were going to try and keep the themes to be similar to the Raise sessions that are happening each month as well. So we referred to the one last week on digital stewardship, and next week, I think for June, there's another one, and I don't know what the subject matter is. Kane will come in and tell me at some point. But yeah, there you go, Kane. You're unmuted. What are we talking about next week?
Fundraising after COVID-19 with Streetwise Opera, Farn and Maltings and Leeds Playhouse. So that's next Tuesday.
And then there's going to be something in July, and then something in August, and you see the pattern there. So we may be able to use a similar themes to the Raise events, and that also ties it in with the Arts Council funding, which is always good. So yeah, we've had a few thumbs up, so thank you. Those who didn't, if you want to put something in the chat or find a way to raise or lower your thumbs, then thank you, Marissa. That'd be good. And yeah, hopefully we'll this will take off, and we'll have more and more people coming along, and maybe find other creative ways to use the Zoom channels to engage in smaller groups as well as bigger groups.
Cool. Thanks, Dan.
Do feed your ideas back to us, because we're ready to listen and ready to act in accordance.
Yeah, it's absolutely essential to keep the conversation going between the sessions as well. I think that really helps in the build-up to the next session. I just want to say also thanks to Rick that's been visualizing at the back here, and trying to sort of add a little bit of creativity to this discussion. Anyone else final thoughts from anyone else? We've got a couple of minutes to get some final thoughts. How are people feeling? Has your perspective changed? Anything? We got something from Kane over here. Yeah.
Just had a final thought.
Yeah,
I think there's something really amazing about. I guess it's sort of coming back to what Christine was saying. Like, I remember, with Battersea Arts Centre when we had the fire, just how it brought out. It sort of showed you who your tribe was. Like, you found that people who really it was an amazing way of, like, as we're putting our hands up now, of people putting their hands up, I think, this moment, because you do realise what you really care about and what you really want to support. And I think there are probably supporters that come out of this that are going to be really important to your organisation.
Yeah, so it's actually a crucial time, and you're going to make long-lasting connections, potentially. Okay, Dana, final thought?
I was thinking a little bit about how something I've noticed in the media a lot is how much people are boycotting companies who have, responded really badly to this. How everyone's kind of saying, I'm never going to go to a Wetherspoons again because of the way that the leadership handle things. And that, to me, suggests that if we do the flip side of that, if we get out there in our communities, if we try and bring people their favorite shows online, if we are putting ourselves out there, that's what they'll remember and that's what they'll value. So I think now more than ever, we need to work with our organizations and remind them that this is the chance to show that value to the world and articulate that value so that people get on board. So I just think it could be quite an interesting time for us as well.
Okay, so it's actually a moment to actually show your worth, so to speak. Any other final thoughts? We've got David. What's your final thought? Oops, hang on. Is it going to unmute?
There we go. Yeah, I think just sort of building on that, I think we're getting to a point now where people are starting to imagine what life's going to be like on the other side of this, and starting sort of shape what that world might be like. So I think this is a great chance to go to people who are looking for a chance to take control of that and have a bit of an influence over that, and giving them the chance both to shape your work, but also to ensure that so that our organisations are still part of this new world when eventually we come out of lockdown. Okay, so that's another positive. Any positive thoughts like what David said for just something positive to end on? Something from Emily, and I'll come to you.
I think Dominic had a final thought. Is that right, Dominic?
Yeah.
Have you got something positive?
All right, let's go to Dominic first, because Margot. Otherwise, I get trouble from Margot. So.
And also going to have.
And then we're going to go to Emily. Come on, Dominic, you first.
It was just about stewarding. We did get 2 legacy pledges that came through as a result. People said, "How do I do it?" So I thought it was very positive. Yeah. Okay. So the positivity is flowing. Emily, final thought.
I would love to see the arts sector doing a big campaign based on what Anna was saying about organisations having us in our heart, about having a kind of how much does society love the arts? Because I think, we've seen so many people needing creativity in their life, really missing going to the theatre, going to gigs, whatever. And so it would be really cool for the arts organisation as a kind of mass organisational campaign to show the public actually what the value of the arts is, by doing a kind of why do you love us and show us that you love us campaign that really puts the arts out there as really worthwhile in charities, because I think it's completely right, and people sometimes are not so able to publicly say we love you, and actually it would be great to start encouraging people to do that in a really public way.
Okay, that's a great, really constructive point. I think that's definitely food for thought, and hopefully that discussion, that idea will keep going, because it's a really good one. That's just at the very, very end, unless anyone's got a final, super final thought. It doesn't look like they have. So I just want to say thanks to everybody. Anything finally from the chat, Margot?
I mean, the chat has been kind of wrapping up, but definitely there's a lot of stuff that you talked about, or we talked about on Twitter and Facebook. So if you want to recap, if you want to continue those conversations in between sessions, please do. Please retweet and share that this is happening, and share with your networks. And we also have some events coming up, one in literally 27 minutes, and that's our Aberfeldy Live. This is one of our monthly talkies we do for our community and with our community here in Poplar, Tower Hamlets. So that's starting at 7. We're going to crack some pints open, so you can join that if you want. And then we also have some more sessions coming up with a new youth movement, with a new borough. We're going to be working with young people as well, and that's in June. And also in June, we are continuing our collaboration with Rich Mix in East London, where we're going to continue our conversation. How can the arts and cultural sector respond to the needs of their communities? We had a really great session earlier on this month, so please join if you can, and follow us on Twitter at The People Tweet. We are The People Speak, and you've been fantastic. So. Okay, we'll see you at the next one. Thanks very much. See you later, everybody. Lovely to see you all. Thanks for your contributions. It's been fantastic. Looking forward to seeing you again. We'll do the traditional Laurel and Hardy long wave for the end of the meeting. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mikey and Margot.